I bought the apartment with my money, supported everyone in silence. They forged papers and gifted it to my brother at his baby shower. As a token of our collective appreciation, my mother gave a framed deed to my brother during the baby shower that we all attended. There was a close look. I was able to completely pay off the apartment. He leaned in closer to me. To depart, you have 30 days to do so. I cracked a grin. A day is all that is required. By the time the sun rose, a removal crew had been put together. They have removed the cabinets. There are no fixes left. There was a tear in the flooring. I even bought a washer and dryer, and I took it with me. My brother sent me a text message at 6:41 p.m. asking, "Is this a joke?" I responded by saying, "Not yet, but tomorrow's delivery might be." The words that arrived at their door the following morning were, "It began with a cake." It was one of those fondant monstrosities that looks more like a ginger reveal that exploded at a Tiffany's outlet than it does like an actual dessert. Perhaps blue ribbon, edible pearls, and little plastic shoes balanced on top like the cherry of poor choices. My mom was standing next to it, beaming as if she'd just solved generational poverty through themed desserts. I wasn't supposed to be here. Technically, I wasn't even invited. I got the address from my cousin, who sent it with a "don't shoot the messenger" text, the kind of family loyalty that could get you voted off an island. Right before the cupcakes and after the pastel balloon arch collapsed for the third time, my mother clinked her glass with a fork and announced that she had an announcement. Although it was not a particularly large gift, it was a vintage silver rattle that was engraved with the baby's initials, wrapped in navy tissue, and tucked away in a box that I had driven across town to pick up. She started, which, if you know my family, is code for someone who is about to be humiliated. "Please smile for the cameras." She held up a frame that was gold-trimmed and tacky, with just enough weight to feel serious. Inside the frame was a deed. "This," she said proudly, "is a gift from all of us." She then went on to say to the new parents, "It's theirs now, paid in full." There was a round of applause. My brother flashed a grin. A tear or two was wiped away by his girlfriend. I heard my aunt scream, "You guys are really amazing." At that moment, it seemed more like they had rescued a puppy than they had stolen a mortgage. After getting to my feet, I made my way over to my mother and took the frame away from her grasp. "Check out the name. Greetings, my name is." My gaze first went to them, then to the picture frame, and last to my father. In the manner of a used car salesperson, he approached the situation and offered an unexpected upgrade. In a low voice, he informed me, "You have 30 days to vacate." I cracked a grin. As I walked away, I returned the frame, nodded to no one in particular, and said, "One day is enough." At 5 o'clock in the morning, the building manager had taken the initiative to unlock the front entry. Quiet, no scene, not yet. By 7 o'clock in the morning, the removal crew arrived. By the time it was 9:30, everything that they had brought into the apartment had disappeared. It tore the floor apart. It was paid for by them. The cot, the drapes, and the dresser from IKEA that has legs that are unequal are all packaged in boxes. I didn't even handle the things that were mine, such as the Etsy wall sign that read, "Our little nest peeled and trashed." I just got rid of the things that weren't mine. The appearance of their home had changed by 11 o'clock in the morning. It was really similar to mine. The question, "Is this a joke?" was sent to me via text message by my brother at 6:41 p.m. I responded, "Not yet, but tomorrow's delivery could be." The apartment was never contemplated as a possibility. Neither for me nor for them was it. In the year 2020, I made the transaction. This cozy 2-bedroom property is only a short distance away from my place of employment, which is located in town. There is adequate lighting in the kitchen. Never once did I write about it. There was never anyone invited over. My name was that. That was the sole purpose of the endeavor. Afterward, my brother arrived. In the beginning, it was merely a temporary situation until we discovered anything. Together with a yoga mat, a cat, and 2 duffel bags, he and his partner arrived at the location. My response was, "Sure, 1 month, maybe 2. They remained for a total of 19 months. I have never made a request for rent, not a single time. There were times when they offered to buy groceries for you. Occasionally, they did so. In most cases, they did not. I did not have a record of it. My assumption was that it would only be permanent. I had made a mistake. In the beginning, they installed floating flooring as their initial step. It's not the worst ones. Mid-range laminate made of oak. This was something that my brother described as being beneficial for all of us. It was bought by him. I just let it go. Next, the bookcases were brought in. $160 on IKEA hacking. The frame is white, fake legs made of gold, with the caption, "Our apartment is coming together." His fiancée posted a time-lapse video of him installing it onto her social media account. I positioned myself behind the camera. Their language developed throughout the course of time. The item was transferred from yours to ours. We are looking for a place where we may be quiet and make statements such as "Thank you for letting us stay" and "We love this home." The toothbrushes they used were found in my cup, their shoes were found by the front entrance, and their clothes was found in my washing machine. I did not utter a single word. Next, the infant arrived. Neither of them communicated with me directly. I found out about it through a narrative that she posted on Instagram, in which she displayed a sonogram of him with him flexing as if he had found fire in the background picture. I congratulated you via text message that I sent. I didn't ask him what he meant when he said, "We should talk about making things more permanent." Instead, I just listened. They never provided any clarification. My mother and father called me 3 weeks later. In response to my mother's inquiry, I discussed the possibility of gifting the apartment. In a symbolic sense, but not in its whole. The couple is going to start a family. It was her assertion that you were doing well. I declined, and she assured me that it would not be fatal to you. I hung up the phone. Then the family fund was established. The year 2019 marked the beginning of it. In a low voice, a monthly contribution of $1,500 was made to assist in the payment of my parents' mortgage while my father was recovering from his illness. Add an additional $600 to the monthly rent that my sister pays. Legal fees for Uncle Mark amount to a total of $200. The visits to the dentist for Mom cost $320. To repair the roof will cost $3,000. After some time had passed, I decided to quit tracking, but my bank did not. More than 4 years. The total amount of family account transfers is $91,200. It costs $112,000 to pay the apartment mortgage, which includes taxes and fees. Prices for repairs and furniture were $9,300. There is a total of $6,700 for food, utilities, and incidentals. A total of $219,200 was invested by the individual. Contributions made by other individuals in total. The flooring at my brother's house cost $940. The price of that single bookshelf was $160, and the family of his girlfriend handed him a blender that had been used previously. They stopped inquiring once I told them that I would not be transferring the deed. On the contrary, they went ahead and did it. In order to schedule a notary appointment under my name 3 weeks prior to the baby shower, my brother utilized a fake email address that was associated with me. My dad was in charge of the logistics himself. My mother was cooperative with the attorney as well. In 2018, they provided me with a scanned signature from a tax form that I had filled out personally. Despite the fact that it was not an especially good forgery, it was perfectly adequate. My permission was not obtained before the title of the property was transferred. I was given the impression that everyone at the baby shower was giving me a moment to celebrate, smile, and feel like I was a part of the event. As an alternative, I observed my name being displayed in a golden frame, much like a prop. According to my mother, it was a gift from each and every one of us. It would appear that all of us did not include me. I am the same person who purchased the apartment, furnished it, ensured that the lights were always on, and spent $1,280 on the crib. At this moment, Pottery Barn is proudly positioned next to the cake, which is adorned with a bow as if it were the result of a collaborative effort. When I left that night, I did not yell at anyone. In no way did I argue. I logged into my bank account. The comprehensive list of transactions was printed out by me. Regarding the apartment, I emphasized anything that was relevant. I paid $342 to repair his garbage disposal after his girlfriend put avocado pits into it. This was in addition to the down payments, insurance, taxes, and repairs that I had to pay for initially. Given that TikTok asserted that it was okay, it was saved in a folder that was labeled correction, and it contained only facts and no comments. The locksmith had changed the entry code by the time daylight arrived. The buzzer was reset by the building administration, and I made a list of everything in the apartment that did not belong to me. This included the floor, the bookcase, the cot, and the decal that read, "Welcome, baby." On the wall of the living room, everything that they brought in, blogged about, and claimed as their own. Gone. I did not text my brother. I did not threaten legal action. I didn't even explain due to the fact that that was what they anticipated, and I wasn't going to give them that. They assumed that I wouldn't react, which was the point. If they were to make it loud, dramatic, and official, I suppose I would disagree with them. However, if they smiled enough, clinked their glasses, raised gilded frames, and said words like blessing and from all of us, I might be able to keep my mouth shut. Perhaps they could pull it off. However, they did not pull it off. They crossed the line. 189:06 a.m. The following morning, a moving truck arrived in front of the apartment. It was not my apartment, nor was it theirs. It was just the place that they were attempting to take. The driver unloaded 64 flat-packed cardboard boxes. Each box had a label, "Make a fresh start." The boxes were clean and new, labeled in black font, and had pre-marked lines for the contents of the room. An envelope that had been taped was discovered on top of the box. A printed packing guide includes a checklist with the title, "Everything You Brought." The categories were nice. Box 1 contains infant clothing. Boxes 2 through 4 contain nursery decor that was not requested. Box 5 contains a shared toothbrush. It is still not mine. Boxes 6 to 11 contain excuses. Box 12 contains let's chat. My quiet covers boxes 13 through 40. Boxes 41 to 62 contain entitlement, and box 63 contains their floor. Box 64, dignity beneath that. You have 30 days, but I wanted to help you get started. They noticed it before noon. I know because the hallway camera captured my brother opening the door. He stepped back as if the boxes were alive. His girlfriend was behind him, holding a mug and wearing the same mark she always wore when she sought attention. He bent down, opened the top one, and peeked inside. It was empty. She began crying. I viewed the video with the sound turned off. That evening, my phone broke. "Brother, what's wrong with you?" This is not how the family behaves. Dad, you've made your point. Enough. Sister, are you okay? Okay. I didn't respond. Not for them, not anymore. I'd already created my own spreadsheet. Everything I paid for, carried, and they took. I sent it as one PDF. Subject: apartment final numbers. At 4:17 p.m., my mother called back. I let it ring. She left a voicemail. We never intended to seize it. It was symbolic of the baby. I saved the audio file and named it symbolic.mpp3. The following day, my brother showed up. He pressed my buzzer 5 times, and I saw him through the peephole. He was wearing a hoodie and sweatpants, and he was holding a box that was only half folded. I did not open the box. He left the box on my doorstep, and inside was a message that said, "Are you really going to do this?" After that, I stood there until it started raining. That weekend, I had the floors they installed returned. Every plank, screw, and strip of underlayment. I labeled the box. Technically, your reclaimed item is included. He paid $940 for packing peanuts and provided a receipt. It's worth noting that using your own resources makes rebuilding easier. They went out in silence. No more social media. Goodbye. No drama in the group chat. Just slowly disappearing. By the end of the month, I had regained control of the flat in all important ways. Their candles had lost their fragrance. Their coats from the hallway are gone. The baby's name banner folded and returned. Nobody ever asked for the 64 boxes back. I'm assuming they used them. 1 month later, my mother sent me a group email. Subject: family reconciliation. It contained bullet points. Allows not to allow money come between us. This can still result in a win for everyone. Forgiveness is a gift. Remember who helped you when you were in need. I did not react, but instead forwarded it to myself with a different subject line. Family rebranding. Then I archived it. The apartment is quiet now. Sometimes I turn off the lights and just listen. The ghosts of their plans can still be heard echoing throughout the walls. However, ghosts are quieter than people and easier to eliminate. They tried to be loud. Then they attempted to be quiet. Then they tried meek. It began with a text from my sister. Let's just reset. There's no drama, no receipts, a clean slate. I then received a call from my mother. There is only voicemail. I understand we've made mistakes, but you're the wise one. You always were. And then my favorite, a message from my father. Come to dinner. Let's have a conversation between men. They choose a Tuesday. I said yes. The restaurant was Italian and mid-level. They expected the gloomy lighting to make everything gentler. They were wrong. I arrived second. They had already ordered a bottle of wine and 2 glasses. I did not touch mine. My mother launched first. We were under pressure. Then everything became so crazy with the baby. Then we should not have gone behind your back, but we did because we loved you. I let them complete their short conversation. I then opened my bag. 3 objects, quietly placed on the table. A USB, a manila folder, and 1 laminated document. My father reached for the USB. I pulled it back. You won't need it. I've already emailed it to your employers at the bank. My mother froze. I handed her the folder. A legal notice canceling power of attorney is included with a notarized termination of all co-signed accounts. A side letter to conclude my monthly contributions. There's no hoopla, just documents. I looked at my sister. You are no longer covered by your insurance plan, effective last week. She blinked again and then attempted to grin. That is okay. I will work something out. I nodded. Will you? My brother did not show up, so I gave him his own packet by courier. A bill for the use of the property, an itemized spreadsheet of damages, and a QR code that leads to a Dropbox folder titled Resources to Get Started. The folder contains pre-made resume templates, examples of cover letters, a fake LinkedIn profile, and a brief instruction on how to apply for jobs once the free ride has been completed. On that particular Saturday, I organized a picnic for former family members. There was a park table, plastic cups, and name tags with first names and job titles, but no one had job titles, so I brought extras. Each tag said, available. Ask me about my capabilities. My aunt cried when she saw hers. My cousin pretended that it was a joke. My mother described it as confrontational. I stated that it was intentionally confrontational. I then distributed folders within each one which contained 1 printed copy of the URL for the job board, 1 fact sheet, and a sticky note. Since you stated that I was the responsible one, I am assisting you in becoming responsible as well. On the Monday after that, I filed a police report, which was not a lawsuit nor a vengeance, but rather a notice of identity theft and title fraud. When the officer at the desk asked me if I wanted to file charges, I responded, not yet. By Thursday, I had received an email from my father's attorney. The email's subject line read, Concerns about escalation. The body of the email read, Let us not destroy the family over some documents. We can resolve this without resorting to litigation. This is not what your mother wants. I responded with 2 lines. You wanted a life without me. Let me show you what that looks like. They stopped calling and texting, but the silence did not indicate surrender. It meant confusion, which sounded louder. Nobody spoke directly about me anymore. They'd stopped mentioning my name, even in messages they sent to people who still knew how to forward screenshots, but I could hear everything. My cousin from Indiana, who somehow ends up on every family chain, whether she wants to or not, kept me in the loop quietly. There's no commentary, just raw data. Just so you know, she would write and forward the text. Sometimes an audio message, sometimes a photograph, such as one of my mother wearing her healing scarf while restocking books at the local library. My cousin overheard her discussing copays behind the help desk. She also sold 2 handbags, which she referred to as investments. She now refers to them as non-essential joy. It appears that she obtained a part-time job there. She advised everyone to maintain an active lifestyle. The real reason was that her insurance no longer covered her blood pressure medication. It was not out of concern for the environment that my father downsized his car. Rather, it was due to necessity. The dealership confirmed this. My cousin's boyfriend works there. He said that he appeared exhausted and confused about financing. He was unable to recall the model of the hybrid that he was trading in. My father currently drives a used silver sedan. When I turn left, one of my headlights always flickers. Fitting. I know his office has moved to a smaller space. A junior partner mentioned it during a group call, which was screen recorded and leaked. He mumbled something about simply needing less space. He never mentioned the family phone I had stopped paying for, the data plan, or the calendar subscription. My sister moved in with her boyfriend's mother. She keeps referring to it as transitional housing. She also shared a quote last week. Sometimes growth appears to be falling apart first. Caption: mood. Her tuition plan, which I used to fully cover, temporarily has lasted for 5 months. The rug in the guest room smells like wet dog and shampoo that has expired without being used. It is now split between 3 payment systems. She missed one of them, received an email, forgot her login, called the university, was placed on hold, cried, hung up, and tried again the next day. She shared all of this with our cousin over coffee. The cousin called me afterward, dryly. She's learning. My brother hosted the baby's first birthday party at their own apartment. I wasn't invited, but one of my neighbors was, and she shared photos on Facebook. My face was not tagged because I was not present, but the inexpensive plastic tablecloths and mismatched cups were. Apparently, the cupcakes came from a clearance bin. One balloon popped in the middle of a sentence. The Bluetooth speaker would not pair. No photographer, just iPhone timers. The napkins had the word blessed written on them, and someone had crossed out the word with a pen. No one smiled in any of the photographs. They have begun referring to money as tight, which is what people say when they don't want to admit that it has been taken away. My brother applied for a budgeting application, and I know this because it asked for my referral code by accident. He had never used it before. One weekend, 34% of their expenditures were categorized as miscellaneous. They renamed the previous family group chat, and it is now called a support circle. Although I am not a part of it, I do receive screenshots. The interface has not changed. The blue bubbles are still present, and responses continue to be performative. Mom sent a text message that said, "Guess who made lemon bars?" No one gave a response. My sister posted a selfie with the caption, "Growth." The background was the same dog rug. There are no comments. My father sent an article with the title, "Forgiveness adds 5 years to your life." It was seen by 2 people who had no heart. My sister also posted a selfie with the caption, "Growth." I found out that Thanksgiving had passed without me after seeing a fuzzy photo in a shared album from a mutual family acquaintance. The turkey was clearly burned. The chairs did not match. One was a beach chair. They utilized someone else's phone because the music system refused to connect over Bluetooth. They printed up a gratitude list and placed it on the table. 5 blank lines. Only 2 had been filled out. One mentioned health, the other mentioned hope. The photograph had no filter. It didn't require one. My cousin in Indiana texted later. It was bizarre. Nobody brought up your name, not even once. That was the most revealing portion. Not that they missed me, but that they had to make such an effort not to. By the time they stopped pretending I'd return, I'd already rebuilt the floor. They were elderly, noisy in places, and twisted in others. I had no idea how loudly they echoed until there was no one around to muffle the sound. So I took everything down, sanded, sealed, and stained new oak with a matte finish that was warm and honest. I chose it not because of its style, but because it did not make any excuses. After that, I painted the walls a soft gray color that was not cold, not trendy, and simply peaceful. The living room lost 2 seats, but it gained a reading corner. The kitchen now has under-cabinet lighting. The laundry closet was converted into a room. There were no witnesses to the proceedings. Nobody requested for progress photos. That made things easy. For the first time, I wasn't setting up a space for anyone else's needs. I then met her at a hardware store, of course. She was debating about grout color with someone who obviously didn't care. I told a joke. She did not laugh. She corrected the punchline. Better than mine. We departed with the incorrect grout, but swapped numbers. Our first date was a takeout on the floor. My installation was recently completed. She brought her own fork. She said she doesn't eat from plastic. I respected that. She did not inquire about my relatives. Not once, not until month 4. And when she did, it was not a trap, but rather an inquiry. I informed her I had been quietly quitting my kinfolk. She asked, "Did they notice?" I mentioned that they are continuing to perform the loss. "I've just quit clapping." She did not press, only nodded. Then I moved the discussion to paint primers. We built slowly. By month 6, she had her own drawer. By the time she was 8, her toothbrush was still there, as did the shampoo, as did the voice. I didn't cry, but I did sit on the kitchen floor for 20 minutes later, clutching the bowl that she used every morning. It felt heavier. I did not tell my family because there was no circumstance that required it. By the 10th month, we had become engaged. By the 11th month, we were anticipating. She pronounced it like a weather forecast. It was calm, straightforward, and inevitable. There is no announcement to ruin it. There are no seats to be left empty. They discovered it from someone else. My aunt sent me a text. Congratulations, I suppose. No follow-up, no address, and no gift. Perfect. They didn't ask to participate, and I didn't offer. Not out of spite, but for clarity. People who only know noise have no place in an environment meant for serenity. Now, I spend my mornings in a home that stands still. We sometimes dispute minor issues like grocery lists and parking locations, but no one yells. No one vanishes. When the baby kicks, she laughs as if it was a surprise. Every time there was a closet full of hand-me-downs, we gently declined and made our own crib. Because nothing hurts now, there are those evenings when we sit in the nursery and say nothing because silence has changed its meaning. It no longer signifies absence. Rather, it conveys sufficient information. On Christmas Eve, my mom kicked us out, saying no room. Now, Grandma called me back and did something that shook the whole family. Go home. There's no room for you. She didn't whisper it. She didn't pull me aside. She said it loud, sharp, and ice cold, right in front of my 6-year-old son. That was my mother's welcome when we showed up for the family Christmas party 2 years ago. I stood there frozen. My son's smile faded, and we walked away humiliated. But the story didn't end there. My grandmother found out. She called me, demanded I come back. What happened after that flipped the entire family upside down, and made my parents wish they'd never opened that door. Hello, everyone. My name is Daniel. I am 35 years old and work as a branch manager for a company that specializes in auto rentals and used cars in Denver, Colorado. This isn't the work I envisioned as a child, but it provides me with a steady income and the freedom to care for my family members. I live with my wife, Sophie, and our 8-year-old son, Mason, in Thornton, a pleasant suburb about 10 minutes from the office. Every morning, I hear Mason giggling in the room next door. He is usually thrilled to tell me about his weird dreams. Sophie is generally busy in the kitchen preparing breakfast, occasionally reminding me not to forget my phone before I go. These simple moments remind me that true happiness does not need to be complicated. Still, there are times when I wake up in a cold sweat, my heart racing, haunted by recollections of the Christmas party in 2023. Some nights, I sit up in bed, my shirt soaking, knowing deep down that I still can't get rid of the pictures of my parents and younger brother. My narrative begins on a weekend evening in December, only a few days before Christmas. Our family had just concluded a lovely dinner of grilled pork and mashed potatoes, Mason's favorite. While Sophie was cleaning the table and Mason was playing with his Legos in the living room, my phone rang. When the name Grandma Helen appeared on the screen, my heart warmed. I picked up straight away. She's the one person in my family who has ever actually loved me. My grandmother Helen is 78 years old but remains healthy and sharp. She was the only one in the family who ever stood up for me, especially because my parents were always favoring Nathan, my younger brother. After asking a few pleasant questions about Mason, she got to the point of her call. She informed me that this year's Christmas would be hosted at her large house in Boulder, and she hoped that my family would be present. The instant she uttered that, a calm fear crept into my heart. After more than a year of avoiding them, the notion of seeing my parents and Nathan again made my throat clench. Still, I didn't want to disappoint her, so I agreed. I answered her, yes, I'll bring Sophie and Mason. But when I hung up, my mind raced with 100 other ideas. I didn't want to upset her, but the thought of attending that party made me nervous. Sophie strolled in from the kitchen as I was still lost in contemplation after the phone talk with Grandma. She noticed the anxious look on my face and inquired, "What's wrong? You don't look okay." I pulled her into a chair and informed her of Grandma's invitation. Sophie looked at me, concerned, and asked, "Do you want to go? I know you don't feel comfortable seeing them again." I sighed deeply and replied, "I don't want to disappoint Grandma. She's the only family member who's ever truly loved me." Sophie gently placed her hand on me and squeezed lightly. She said, "Whatever you decide, I'm with you." Hearing such remarks from her made me feel grateful and even blessed. I want a woman that understands me and constantly supports me. After nearly 2 minutes of silence, I informed her, "We'll go to Grandma's party. We can't keep running from this." And more importantly, she invited us. Just as I finished speaking, Mason, who was seated nearby, burst out in enthusiasm. He was covertly listening to everything while building his Legos. His delight reminded me of all the times he'd accompanied us on visits to my grandmother. Mason adored Grandma Helen, despite having only seen her a few times. He recommended we prepare a greeting card for her and even asked Sophie if she might bake something for her. Grandma had enjoyed one of Sophie's cakes when we visited approximately 3 months prior. Sophie had suggested Mason make cards for both of his grandparents. Mason refused. He stated, "Grandma and Grandpa don't like me. They only care about Adrian, so I'm not making them cards." Hearing those remarks from my son struck me deeply. I was not sad because he did not love my parents. I was upset because Adrian and Nathan threw a shade over my son, preventing him from experiencing their love. Adrian is the son of Nathan, my younger brother. Nathan had always been my parents' favorite child. When Adrian was born, he became the family's golden grandchild. Growing up with Nathan was unjust, all because he had a smoother mouth and was smarter than me. He was always able to win over adults. When I broke a glass, Mom scolded me and I remained mute. But when Nathan shattered a glass, he would rush to Mom and tell her, "Dear Mom, your sweet son accidentally broke the glass." She would hold him and say, "It's okay." During dinner, anytime our parents had something new, he would immediately throw in a few comments like, "Mom, your new hair looks beautiful," or, "Dad, you're a hero in my heart." I couldn't say those things. He knew more than simply how to captivate our parents. He also knew how to charm people with lavish compliments. That's why my parents gradually began to favor him. I assumed their preference would end as we were older, married, and had children. But it did not. My parents definitely distinguished between Mason and Adrian. They favored Adrian far too much. My parents only paid Mason a brief visit after his birth, but when Adrian was born, they gave him $5,000 to cover diapers and formula. In addition, my mother spent several days at the hospital assisting Nathan's wife in caring for Adrian. She took pictures of Adrian and posted them on her personal Facebook as the children grew older, but she never mentioned Mason. When we had family meals together, the topic was always about Adrian. Then, over a year ago, we had a heated dispute on my father's birthday. After the party that day, my dad gave Adrian a gift, a plane ticket to Hawaii to accompany them. I questioned Mom about Mason's share. She said coldly, "Mason can go next time. If we ever make another trip, we'll bring him." After that, I stood up and complained about how unjust they were. Mom did not fight with me after I finished speakings. Instead, she added, "If you believe it is unfair, don't ever return to this house." Since then, I have stopped bringing my wife and Mason over. Return to the narrative of my grandmother's Christmas party. Mason spent a week before Christmas creating a lovely card to send to great-grandmother. The card was made of green paper that he cut into the shape of a Christmas tree. On the front, he created a small house with smoke curling from the chimney. Next to it sat an elderly lady with silver hair, smiling. Mason scribbled, "I love you, great-grandma, Merry Christmas," in unsteady red crayon letters near the base of the tree. He also affixed a small yellow star in the top right corner. Every night after supper, Mason would sit at the table and color the card. Every now and then, he'd ask me, "Dad, does this look good?" When I nodded and said yes, his face would brighten up like he'd been rewarded. On Christmas morning, Mason went into the kitchen to assist Sophie with baking. They worked and joked together. Sophie would occasionally playfully rub some frosting on his nose, and the two would laugh. Mason's grin with his frosting-covered nose made me smile. When he saw me smiling, he dashed over and hugged my leg, leaving a spot of frosting on my pants. Sophie apologized to me, but I shook my head and softly smoothed Mason's hair. Seeing the grins on my son's and wife's faces in that warm kitchen, with the lovely smell of baked goodies in the air, I hoped that this year's Christmas party would be memorable. And I honestly believed I was correct in accepting Grandma's invitation. At the time, I had no idea that just a few hours later, my mother, Carol, would deliver us a shock we would never forget for the rest of our lives. Around 4:00 p.m., our family departed Denver for Grandma's place in Boulder. We had planned to arrive around 5 p.m., but due to gridlock caused by an accident, we arrived about 6:30 p.m. Mason sat in the back seat, repeatedly asking, "When will we get to your great-grandmother's house?" He clutched the card carefully, afraid it would get wrinkled. Sophie sat next to me, occasionally peering over with an anxious expression, fearing we were arriving too late. My gut constricted as our automobile turned onto the familiar route that leads to Grandma's house. The two-story white house with the red tile roof appeared, surrounded by enormous oak trees decorated with glittering Christmas lights. The driveway and curb in front of the house were jam-packed with cars. I spotted Nathan's blue Honda Civic and my parents' silver Camry among the others. There were a couple other cars that I didn't recognize, most likely from distant relatives. At that point, my heart began to beat weirdly and nervously. It had been over a year since I last returned home or attended a gathering at my parents' house, since the day they favored Adrian in front of Mason. After finding a parking spot at the end of the street, we approached Grandma's front door and rang the doorbell. Sophie stood by me carrying Mason, who was still holding the card and the box of cookies in his hands. I could hear laughter and talk from within, lovely Christmas music playing, and the aroma of great food wafting out. In less than a minute, the door opened slightly, revealing my mother, Carol, standing there. She was dressed in a red sweater with a reindeer motif, and her hair was nicely styled. Nothing like the plain woman I knew. It was difficult to express how I felt at that time. Half of me was relieved to see my mother after more than a year apart, but another half was concerned about how she would react. When she saw us, she looked from me to Sophie and then to Mason, who was grinning. Her gaze was as cold as ice, unlike the warmth I had hoped for. Then, with the same chilly tone, she said, "Go home. There's no room left." I froze after hearing those words. My heart appeared to freeze for a second, and my mind spun, attempting to understand what had just occurred. Sophie stood behind me, stunned, her eyes wide with surprise. She reflexively tightened her hold on my hand. Mason was just over 6, but he understood what my mother had said. His smile faded slowly. His brilliant eyes became perplexed. He looked up at me, then at Sophie, perplexed about why we were being turned away. After a brief silence, I attempted to remain cool and told my mother, "Grandma invited us. There's no way there's no room." My mother responded quickly and dryly, "Helen told me if you showed up late, send you away." I stood there stunned, like if someone had squeezed the air straight out of my chest. She shut the door before I could say anything more, leaving my family alone. The cheery sounds of the party inside continued as if we hadn't been. Sophie gently stopped me as I grabbed for the doorbell once more, determined to learn the truth. I gazed at her. She shook her head, her eyes filled with sorrow, and quietly whispered, "Let's go. I don't want Mason to see any more of this." I gazed down at my son. Mason stood there, wide-eyed and puzzled, still clutching the card and the box of cookies. With trembling voice, he asked, "Dad, why didn't Grandma let us in? I made this card for my great-grandmother." Hearing that simple question devastated me. I had no idea how to convey adults' brutality to a 6-year-old. I quickly got Mason up, took Sophie's hand, and walked away from Grandma's house. When we went to the car and I opened the door for Mason, he started crying. Tears ran down his cheeks as he cried, "Dad, I just wanted to give my great-grandmother the card." My heart broke while watching him cry. I hugged him close, feeling absolutely powerless. Sophie sat alongside me, her eyes crimson as she fought back tears. That was the moment I promised myself that I would never let my son see my mother, Carol, again. After leaving Grandma's place, I went to a local Denny's for dinner. On the way there, Mason was quietly sobbing and asking, "Dad, is great-grandmother mad at me?" Every question he asked seemed like a stab in my heart. Sophie had to calm him down by talking about the delicious cuisine he could get at Denny's. She said, "Do you want pancakes with maple syrup? Or maybe some crispy fried chicken? They even have cotton candy." Mason instantly perked up. His eyes lighted up when he heard about the cotton candy. He clasped his hands and said, "I want pancakes and cotton candy." I was pleasantly surprised by how quickly he recovered. That's the thing about kids. One moment they're bawling their eyes out, and the next they're smiling like if nothing happened. Looking in the rearview mirror, I noticed Mason had stopped weeping. Now he was full of food-related questions. Sophie looked over at me, her eyes apprehensive but yet relieved. Seeing our son happy again gave her some peace. When we pulled into the Denny's parking lot, I looked at the card and the box of cookies that was still on the back seat. I had lingering regrets and doubts about what had recently happened. Knowing how strict my grandma can be, it would not be out of character for her to refuse someone admittance simply because they were late. But the fact that my mother delivered the message made me mistrust everything. My phone unexpectedly rang as we were ready to enter Denny's. When I saw the name Grandma Helen on the screen, I hesitated for a second before going silent. I didn't want to talk to anyone right then, especially given what had transpired. Sophie glanced at me kindly as the phone rang again, saying, "You should pick up. Maybe something's wrong." I answered the phone while she was still speaking. Grandma's voice came through the speaker, full of concern. "Daniel, is everything okay? Why haven't you all arrived yet?" Her question caught me completely off guard. I promptly asked, "Didn't you tell my mom to send us away because we were late?" There was a slight pause. Then Grandma responded, visibly astonished. "I never said that." My brain exploded. So, my mother had lied. Grandma hadn't told her to send us away. Anger and hurt flooded over me. I couldn't believe my mother could be so harsh, not just turning us away, but also accusing Grandma of covering it up. After a period of stillness, Grandma spoke again with a harsh tone. "Come back. I'll get to the bottom of this." I let out a slow breath and responded, "I don't think making a big deal out of this is necessary. I'll stop by to see you another time." Suddenly, Grandma shouted, something I'd never heard from her before. "Come back right now!" I was stunned. I had never heard her so irate or commanding. Grandma Helen, who had always talked to me softly and lovingly, was now speaking with firmness and wrath. Her voice rendered me stunned. 30 seconds of silence passed. Then her voice came through again, calmer but still determined. "I'm sorry for raising my voice. Please bring your family back. I'll be waiting." Her genuine apologies destroyed something within me. Grandma was always the only person in the family who understood and actually loved me. If she asked, I couldn't refuse. In a hushed voice, I said, "We'll come back right away." Sophie, who had overheard the entire conversation, looked at me with understanding. She nodded and said, "Hey, let's go back." Mason stood in front of the restaurant, unsure what was going on. When he noticed us walking back to the car, he asked, "Mom, Dad, aren't we eating here anymore?" I softly touched his hair and murmured, "We're going to see Grandma Helen now." Mason sprang with delight as soon as I said it. "Dad, then let's go. Hurry." After that, we jumped in the car and drove as fast as we could back to Grandma's house. 10 minutes later, we were back in front of Grandma's house. This time, she was already outside, waiting for us. Some distant aunts and uncles, as well as my parents and Nathan and his family, stood behind her. The scene before me was surprising. Everyone was standing outside on the porch in the cold Christmas night air. In the frigid temperatures, their breath formed little clouds. Grandma stood in the center with a stern scowl, while my folks stood off to the side, visibly annoyed. Nathan, my younger brother, became irritated as soon as we got out of the car. "Because of your family, Grandma and all of us had to wait out here in the cold." Before I could react, Grandma Helen yelled in a voice I'd never heard from her before. "Shut up!" Her voice rang across the calm night air. Nathan froze, startled to silence. He didn't say another thing. The other relatives were also quiet. Nobody dared to speak. Then Grandma came over to us. Her expression relaxed. She hugged Sophie and me, then went down to gently take Mason's hand. She spoke softly to him. "Great-grandmother has been waiting a long time for you." Mason smiled at her kindness, still clutching the card securely. As we entered the house, I passed my mother. I looked over and noticed her face pallid, her gaze avoiding mine. Sophie, who was strolling beside me, could sense the strain as well. She squeezed my hand tightly, as if to give me strength. When we walked into the living room, I noticed everything had been nicely decorated for Christmas. A large tree stood in the corner, adorned with glittering decorations and twinkling lights. The table was piled high with wonderful food awaiting service, and the fireplace crackled softly, casting a comfortable warmth around the room. Everything was ideal for a Christmas gathering, except for the oppressive tension in the air. Grandma stood in the center of the room, her expression as serious as I had ever seen. In a strong and firm voice, she said, "Before we continue with this celebration, some things need to be addressed." The room fell completely silent. Nobody dared to cough or even shift. Relatives gathered along the walls. Nathan and his wife stood by Adrian, while my parents hovered in the back as if they were trying to disappear. Suddenly, Grandma turned to my mother and yelled with clear authority, Carol, is there anything you'd like to say to me or to Daniel and his family? Everyone in the room looked at my mother. She didn't say anything, just stood there, pale as a sheet, hands trembling, unable to meet anyone's eyes. When she didn't speak, Grandma resumed, her tone stronger now. This is my house, not yours. Who gave you the right to send Daniel and his family away? That question landed like a slap. My mother sputtered, attempting to defend herself. I didn't. Daniel is lying. I didn't send anyone away. Grandma cut in with a voice that could freeze water as she continued to deny everything and tried to blame me. Enough. Then she turned to Uncle Bruce, a longtime neighbor who frequently assisted her with household repairs. She called out, "Bruce, pull up the footage from the front door." Uncle Bruce removed the tablet from Grandma's grasp without hesitation. He was knowledgeable about technology and frequently assisted her in setting up and using electronic gadgets. He accessed the security camera software with swift, practiced fingers and located the footage from the moment we arrived. The room was so quiet that you could hear the wall clock ticking. Mason stood alongside me, still holding his card, perplexed by everything. Sophie gripped my hand tightly, both of us tensed as we waited. A few seconds later, the familiar voice came through the tablet speaker, loud and clear. "Go home. There's no room left." My parents froze. Their features became pallid, their gaze fixed on the tablet as if it were a monster. Then the second sentence arrived, much colder and more cutting. "Helen told me if you showed up late, I had to send you away." My mother's voice was unmistakable, flat, lifeless, and nasty. I looked around. My parents' and Nathan's family's reactions were similar to those of people who had been caught in the act. Nathan lowered his head, reluctant to look anyone in the eyes. His wife hugged Adrian closely, hiding him from what was happening. My father, Robert, stood still, his face devoid of any color. My mother was trembling so intensely that it appeared she could collapse. Whispers started to spread throughout the room. Relatives began talking to each other, throwing disapproving glances at my parents. No one could believe Carol, who they had always thought was kind, could be so harsh to her grandson. After the entire audience had heard everything, Uncle Bruce turned off the video and set the tablet down. His expression, too, betrayed silent displeasure at what had just been disclosed. The air surrounding me felt heavy and tense, making it difficult to breathe. But within, I felt relief, which I hadn't felt all evening. I felt a quiet sense of satisfaction. The truth had finally been revealed. A little while later, the room began to vibrate with noise. The guests began speaking up, openly criticizing my mother. Janet, my father's cousin, shakes her head and says, "Carol, I never thought you could do something like this." From the corner of the room, Uncle Mike, another cousin of my father, added, "This is too much. Christmas is about family being together. No one with a heart would kick their son and grandson out of a celebration. Even animals have more compassion than you, Carol." The voices of disapproval spread quickly. Whispers turned into loud comments. My mother stood there in complete isolation. No one spoke in her defense. 2 minutes later, Grandma raised her hand and the entire room fell silent. Her authority in the family was absolute. Nobody dared to disobey her gestures. Then, with a chilly voice, she declared, "From this moment forward, I no longer have a son named Robert, and I have no daughter-in-law named Carol." The words hit the room like a flash of lightning. My father, Robert, screamed out in a panicked tone, "Mom, you can't do this!" My mother broke down in tears, screaming and pleading, "I know I was wrong. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done it." But Grandma had made up her mind. Her face was as hard as stone, unmoved and resolute. She had suffered injustice in our family for far too long. Before they could speak again, she shouted loudly and clearly, with a final tone, "You have 30 days to leave the house you're living in. The estate in Highlands Ranch will be passed on to Daniel and his family. Tomorrow morning, I'll begin transferring ownership, and a formal eviction notice will be issued." They stood there in shock. My parents' house was officially Grandma's, and the Highlands Ranch estate, one of her most valuable holdings, was now being passed down to us. My father stammered, and his voice trembled. "You can't do this. I'm your son." Grandma stared him dead in the eye and stated, her voice full of disappointment, "You stopped being my son when you favored Nathan over Daniel. Now leave." Her remarks had a definitive impact. Robert and Carol remained transfixed like statues, unable to comprehend what had just occurred. Moments later, they turned and walked out discreetly, heads down, reluctant to catch anyone's eye. After my parents went, Nathan, my younger brother, stayed behind. He looked at Grandma, his voice stiff with fear, and asked, "What about me? I'm your grandson too." His question caught everyone off guard. Grandma looked at him with chilly eyes and an unreadable attitude. She answered simply, "You won't have a share. You saw your parents mistreat Daniel and said nothing. You even took pride in it. Don't think I didn't notice." Nathan attempted to defend himself. "But Grandma, I didn't get involved in what Mom and Dad did. Grandma lifted her hand, stopping him before he could finish. Then she said, "You stayed silent in the face of injustice and benefited from it. That makes you complicit." Nathan's face flushed in irritation as he heard this. He took his wife's hand and reached for Adrian. He spoke through clenched teeth. "Fine. If that's how it is, we're leaving." Before stepping out, Nathan turned to face me, his eyes filled with bitterness. He shouted, "Are you happy now, Daniel? You've torn this whole family apart." I stood quietly. I did not respond. Deep down, I didn't feel proud or triumphant. All I felt was deep, quiet sadness for everything that had been lost. Nathan stormed out, bringing his wife and son with him. Adrian, formerly the favored grandson, now resembled a bewildered youngster, entirely adrift in a position he couldn't comprehend. As the door closed again, the room went silent. The remaining family gazed at me with compassion, as if they had just witnessed the end of an era. At that point, I realized what was ahead, the aftermath and implications of Grandma's decision. After they went, Grandma asked that the party continue. She clapped her hands quietly and told everyone, "Let's enjoy this Christmas night. This is a time for real families to be together." The vibe in the room slowly reverted to normal. The remaining relatives did their best to ignore what had transpired and concentrate on the celebration. Laughter and talk gradually returned, though first stiff. Mason had been waiting for this moment all week. He hurried over to great-grandmother, holding the card in his hands. Shyly, he raised it and said, "Great-grandmother, this is the Christmas gift I made for you." Grandma took the card right away, her eyes lighting up as she saw the adorable illustrations. She hugged Mason tightly and remarked in a friendly tone, "Thank you, sweetheart. I will frame this card and hang it on the living room wall for everyone to see." Mason grinned from ear to ear, delighted that his present had been appreciated. Later, my wife brought out the cookies she had baked that morning for everyone to enjoy. The chocolate chip cookies were delicately adorned with multicolored candy pieces. Our family and neighbors could not cease admiring them. Janet said, "Sophie, these cookies are amazing. Can you share the recipe?" Uncle Bruce nodded. "Yes, they remind me of my childhood." Grandma helped slice and serve the cookies, and her face was brighter than it had been in a long time. It felt as if a big burden had been lifted from her shoulders as she watched everyone have fun. I softly thanked Grandma for what she had done for our family. We spent the night at Grandma's place because it was late and snow was falling. Mason slept with great-grandmother, while Sophie and I remained in the living room. I slept better than I had in years, as if I had finally escaped a nightmare that had lasted much too long. I assumed Grandma was angry when she disowned my father and cut him off from his fortune, but she was not joking. At 8:00 a.m. the next morning, after we had breakfast, toast, and homemade sunny-side-up eggs, Grandma summoned her lawyer, Christian, to the house. He had been her attorney for many years, a well-dressed man in his 60s with silver hair and a calm professional demeanor. When Mr. Christian arrived, Grandma sat at the dining table to go over the legal processes. Sophie and I sat nearby as Mason played with the toys that Grandma had set out for him. Grandma gave the lawyer permission to begin the process of transferring ownership of 2 properties. The 2-story house in Lakewood, where my parents had been living, a property she had purchased for them 10 years before, and the estate in Highlands Ranch, which she now intended to pass down to me and my wife. Combined, those 2 properties were worth nearly $2 million. Mr. Christian took detailed notes on every element of her instructions for the legal documents. She also instructed him to submit an official notice asking that my parents leave the Lakewood house within 30 days. Mr. Christian nodded and responded, "I'll prepare everything and send the formal documents later today." In that moment, I felt profound gratitude to Grandma, not for the money or the property, but for the fairness and justice she had delivered to our family. After the lawyer left, I jumped up, hugged her tightly, and remarked in an emotional voice, "Thank you, Grandma. I don't know what else to say." She softly patted my back and smiled. "I'm just doing what's right." Before we returned to our home, she hugged Mason firmly and told us, "Next time you visit, make sure to bake more cookies for me to give to the neighbors." They loved Sophie's cookies. Her simple suggestion made Sophie and me laugh. I informed her, "If you want, we can bake cookies daily and bring them to you." As we drove away from her house, I peeked in the rearview mirror and saw her waving farewell on the porch. And at that moment, I realized our lives had begun a new chapter. I assumed my parents would quietly leave after what transpired at Grandma's place. However, they didn't. Instead of accepting the consequences of their conduct, they retaliated recklessly. When they received the eviction notice from Christian, Grandma's attorney, they went to her house to demand explanations. Perhaps they hoped they could persuade her to change her mind, or at least make her feel guilty. After they had left, Grandma called me. Her voice seemed fatigued. She said, "Daniel, I need to let you know. Your parents came by and caused a scene. You should be careful. They might show up at your house too." Her account provided me with additional information about what occurred. My father had demanded that she return everything. My mother sobbed, claiming Grandma was pulling the family apart, but Grandma remained steadfast. Finally, she threatened to contact the police before they departed. And, exactly as she had said, when I arrived home from work that afternoon, my parents and Nathan's family were standing in front of my Thornton home. I'd barely parked into the garage when I noticed their angry faces at my front door. As I went outside, Nathan approached, his face flushed with wrath. He pointed at me and said furiously, "You'll choke on that mansion, Daniel." My mother stood by him, her eyes red with tears, yet her speech was full with hatred. "I regret ever giving birth to you." That sentence, coming from my mother, stunned me. I stood motionless for a minute, but I held my ground. I refused to allow my emotions take over. Seconds after, my father stepped forward, his voice low and threatening. "If you still want us to consider you family, you'd better give up some of what Grandma gave you." They shouted and cursed at me for about 2 minutes. Neighbors started peering through their windows, intrigued by the disturbance. Instead of shouting or attempting to reason with them, I quietly took out my phone and contacted 911. When the wire was connected, I stated explicitly, "Hi, there are individuals outside my home threatening me." My father roared when he heard that. "You're calling the cops on your father?" I stared him directly in the eyes and responded coldly, "Are you confused? I don't know who you are." That phrase struck him like a slap. He stood there, speechless and flushed with wrath. Even Nathan appeared stunned. He had not expecting me to stand up like that. A little later, Nathan's wife tugged on his sleeve, saying, "Let's go. The police will be here any minute." They hesitantly left, not wanting to risk being imprisoned for harassment. My parents entered their automobile, their faces full with wrath. Nathan gave me one final glance, full of contempt, before driving away. 2 officers came around 15 minutes later. I brought them inside and explained everything from start to finish. I also showed them footage from our security camera that clearly demonstrated the threats. Officer Johnson, an experienced middle-aged man, took copious notes. He inquired, "Would you like to file an official report?" Without hesitation, I nodded and told him, "Yes, I want this documented so I can apply for a restraining order. I'm worried they'll keep harassing my family." Only 1 week later, my parents and Nathan's family received a formal notice from the court. They were legally barred from contacting my family for the next 3 years. No visits, phone calls, or emails. No interaction in any way. When I received a copy of the court order, I felt a sense of relief. Finally, my tiny family was safe from the people who had brought us so much anguish. My parents moved out of the house precisely 30 days after getting Christian's notice. That afternoon, I drove over to check on the place, and it was empty. They had left some old furniture and stains on the walls, but at least they had followed the court order. We did not move in. The mansion in Lakewood, while lovely, contained far too many terrible memories of the old family. Instead, I hired professionals to thoroughly rebuild it, including new paint, carpeting, and repairs throughout. Once the work was completed, I rented it to a family of 6 for $2,000 per month. We did not move into the Highlands Ranch estate that Grandma had given us. Sophie and I decided to stay in the Thornton home we bought together, one we built from the ground up and packed with memories. That was our real home. The estate had deteriorated over time due to a lack of sufficient maintenance. I spent approximately $150,000 to totally restore it, including replacing the plumbing and electrical systems, laying hardwood floors, modernizing the kitchen, and planting the garden. After refurbishing, I gave it over to Premium Property Management to maintain and lease. Depending on the rental agreement, I now get $6,000 to $10,000 per month from it. However, I did not waste that money on frivolous purchases. During the first month, we went to visit Grandma, and I tried to give her all of the rental revenue. She shook her head and politely refused. Keep it. That's the return on something I chose to give you. Use it to invest in Mason's future. Her remarks moved me greatly. I nodded in agreement. I opened a separate savings account for Mason and deposited the majority of his rental income. After everything we'd been through, I felt extremely fortunate to have Grandma in my life, not only because she gifted us these properties, but also because she taught me the true value of fairness and genuine love. It's been over a year since that awful Christmas night. Life has changed in ways I never expected. My parents are now residing in another location, Phoenix, Arizona, and rely on their retirement benefits. The large house and all of the amenities that Grandma had offered them for many years are no longer there. According to distant relatives, they live in a small apartment and rely on their monthly Social Security checks to get by. Nathan has not communicated with me since that day. He and his family relocated to Texas to start over. Adrian, once the golden grandson, is now a distant memory of the past. When I initially thought of the broken family, I felt a little melancholy. Childhood memories, especially those shaped by partiality, remained part of me. But gradually, I realized that my life should center solely around my wife, my kid Mason, and my grandmother. We pay regular visits to Grandma on weekends. She is now 80 years old, with whiter hair and slower steps, but her mind remains sharp and her spirit happy. Mason always looks forward to seeing his great-grandmother, who adores him. I hope Grandma stays with us for many more years, so Mason will have even more memories with this amazing woman. Life is full of joy these days, especially since we're going to receive a new little angel. Sophie is 8 months pregnant, her tummy round and gorgeous, and Mason can't stop chatting to the baby inside. He frequently remarks, "Hey baby, I'll teach you how to play Legos and how to draw." At night, I consider myself fortunate to be wrapped up on the sofa watching a movie, Sophie putting her head on my shoulder and Mason sleeping in my lap. This is the bliss I've been seeking for all these years. Today, I offer my tale not to brag about my current situation, but so that anyone who has ever been mistreated, disregarded, or injured by their own family understands they are not alone. Most critically, they have the right to protect themselves. Never accept injustice simply because it comes from kin. Your kids deserve to be loved equally. Set boundaries if you tried to speak up, but no one listened. Distancing oneself from poisonous people, especially if they are blood relatives, might sometimes be the best way to defend your house. You don't owe somebody the right to hurt you simply because they have your DNA. And only 1 day ago, I received a call from a distant relative. My parents currently live in Phoenix near him. He called to reprimand me. He said that I was the reason our family came apart. Do you think I'm the cause my family split up?